Welcome to Keys Productions. I'm Chronographers Cocon. Let's get into the video. Today's video, we're starting a new playlist and it's film reviews, right? Now obviously my channel up until this point has been very historically based and very politically based, etc. And at some point down the line we might kind of delve into that like once in a blue moon. If it's something like really present, then yeah, I'll talk about it. But for now, we're going to be focusing on film reviews. Now, the reason for this is because I'm not just interested in history and politics. I'm also, a script writer, right? So I have written several scripts. At the moment, I'm not signed and stuff. Yeah, so I'm not like attached to any. I don't have like an agent and stuff. But the reason why I set up the channel was partly this thing of trying to build a platform for myself, so that people can have a chance to kind of get a sample of some of my films and eventually for them to be made into like proper films and stuff, right? But anyway, that's obviously a long way off. So for now, if nothing else comes of it, I want to just talk about my love of film. So within this kind of new playlist that we're doing, we've got a certain structure that we're going to follow and stuff, right? So first of all, what we're going to do is we're going to be looking through the list of like greatest directors, all my favorite directors. So we're going to be looking at Walt Disney. I know obviously he wasn't necessarily a director and stuff, but obviously he was the one who founded Disney as a company and stuff. And all the films that were covered throughout his lifetime, we're going to be looking at those. Then we're going to be looking at Stanley Kubrick. We're going to be looking at Martin Scorsese, Spielberg. We're going to be looking at all these different people, right? Many more. So with this, what we're going to be doing is going through like a biography of these different directors. And then what we're going to be doing is when we do a biography, we're then going to be going through all of the greatest films that they did in like a chronological order, right? So what is the format of these videos going to be? So the format for the videos when we're going to be looking at the films that are being done is the following, right? And also as well, I should kind of say that once we've kind of gone through all of like my favorite directors, what we're then going to do is kind of must watch films or films to watch before you die or something along those lines, right? So these are films which don't necessarily make the cut in terms of like the directors who made them might have only just made one really good film and the rest of them are kind of mediocre or whatever. So that's, it doesn't necessarily fill in with what we were doing before, but it still is kind of tied in with this, yeah? So we're going to be looking at some really great films, some films which have had a great historical and cultural significance and stuff. And so that's what we're going to be looking at. We're not going to be looking at any Marvel film. So if you're into Marvel films, it's not the thing for you, right? So we're not going to be covering any of those. There's almost no depth to them, apart from maybe Black Panther and stuff. There's almost no depth to the rest of them. So we're going to be looking at good films, okay? Good films. But anyway, so the format for when we're actually going to be talking about the specific films is the following, right? What we're going to do first of all is look at the story. So we're going to be looking at, well, the basic storyline. So spoilers, whatever. I like spoilers. Some people are weird like that and they don't like spoilers, but like whatever, that's on you. But like, so we're going to look at the storyline, but also we're going to be looking at the origins of that storyline, right? So whether it's based on a book or a play, etc., or we're just going to focus on the script writer themselves, right? And we're going to be looking at some of the things like within their life and what influenced them and stuff, right? Then we're going to be looking at the kind of creator story, yeah. So again, this is going to be some of the what made them write the thing, when they wrote it, all this kind of stuff here, yeah, and some of the influences and things that went on in their life, and the reason why they wanted to make this film, right? And also why the director chose to pick that script, or sometimes the director themselves are the script writer as well, and so so what kind of thought process kind of went on for them. Then we're going to be talking about the studio story, right? So the studio part of it, a film is a collaborative project, right? As much as they say, oh, it's a Spielberg film or it's a Kubrick film, etc., it's a collaborative project. It has lots of different things. You have to weigh up a financial cost. You have to work out all these different things. And sometimes it can be a thing where a director's like, oh, I want to have this actor in. And the studio's like, no, we don't want that actor, and all these kind of things here. So all the kind of background drama and all the kind of things that went into making the film, and also just the actual production side of it and stuff, and the actual like filming side of it, etc. That's what we're going to be looking at as well. And then what we're going to be doing as well is looking at the themes and like the wider history of the film, because the way to look at a film, it's not just a piece of art and it's not just a piece of entertainment, right? It's a historical event. right? So all the things that took place at the time when that film was made, that's why the film was made at that point at time, right? So some stories are kind of universal and could be kind of done any time, but oftentimes the themes that kind of come into each adaptation of the film can be completely different based on the era in which it came out in. And some films are so kind of specific, right? If they come out a few years beforehand, it could never have been made, right? And if it came out a few years afterward, again, probably wouldn't have been made. So these are all kind of things that you have to kind of like take in consideration here. That so a film is a historic, it's a piece of history, right? So that's the way we're going to be treating it. We're going to be analysing it like it's a piece of history, and we're going to be looking at the themes and like the politics of the time at which the film came out, and that's what we're going to be focused on with that. And then what we're going to be doing is looking at the legacy of the film, right? So we're going to be looking at that kind of, what was its reception? What was its box office like, right? What was the kind of critical reception of it? Because obviously some films can do very well at the box office, but then like they don't have much like kind of longevity. Some films can do very poorly at the box office, but then like, later on people kind of like grow on it and like people kind of realize just how good the film is. And some films obviously are like absolutely brilliant and almost no one's heard of them, right? And they never got any recognition really. So that's what we're kind of going to be focusing on as well. And also bear this in mind, that oftentimes films are either liked by the critics or they're liked by the audience, right? And sometimes there's a disparity between that. So sometimes you'll have things where the critics will be like, this is a really good film, and the audience will be like, no, it's terrible, and vice versa, right? So that's also kind of an interesting thing that we're going to be looking at. And then finally as well, what we're going to be looking at is some of the notable lines and some of the special effects within, not necessarily special effects, but like if there's like particular angles, if there's particular lighting effects, if there's particular like kind of like extra things within it, right? We're going to include that. So we are going to include little clips from these films, just so people who haven't seen the film before get like an idea of it. Nobody cares. Also as well, obviously, I'm going to be watching the films before I kind of like do the research for it and stuff, because obviously most of these films I've seen before, some of them I haven't, and even if I have like seen them a bunch of times, I'm gonna like really watch them and like really analyze them for you, so I kind of get the most out of it, right? That way I'm not just kind of shooting off the hip with regard to it. And the final thing I kind of want to say is this, right? So we're going to be looking at a lot of classic films, but I want the narrative about that to shift, right? So I want the people to look at it a different way. So at the moment, right, I am reading War and Peace, right? I'm like over halfway through. It's really, really good film. It's like a really good book. Obviously been made into films as well. And, at the beginning of it, there's a bit where they're talking about classics and the way to view a classic. So there's a quote from Bertolt Brecht. So he was a playwright and stuff. Like he wrote many different plays, and obviously some of these got turned into films. But there's a quote that he said here. I'm going to read it out to you now. What gets lost is the classic's original freshness, the element of surprise, of newness, of productive stimulus that is the hallmark of such works. The passionate quality of a great masterpiece is replaced by a stage temperament, and where the classics are full of fighting spirit, here the lessons taught the audience are tame and cozy and fail to grip. So with that quote there, the point that we're saying with classics is this, that oftentimes it's easy to kind of put a classic on like a pedestal, and be like, oh my God, this, it's the Godfather, you have to, and we kind of create this kind of artificial hype about it, which loses a lot of the initial magic, that these things had. So the reason why we're going to be going through the history of it, and the reason why we're going to be talking about all the kind of like backstory to the film, isn't just so that we kind of just sit there and worship like the film, right, and be like, oh my God, it's such a great classic. What we're going to be doing instead is appreciating it and looking at it through the lens of an audience member who's watching it in that premiere, right, and putting ourselves in their shoes. So when you watch The Godfather, when we talk about The Godfather, for instance, I don't want you to be looking at it like, as someone in 2022 or 2023 or whenever you end up watching this film, this video, right? I want you to look at it as someone who's watching it in 1971 when it first comes out, right? I want you to understand the time and the culture and everything that it's is going into it, and I want you to then look at it through those lenses, yeah, right? So in the same way, when I'm reading War and Peace, I'm not reading it like, oh, this is a great classic, I need to read this for etc. That's when I first bought it, that's what I kind of thought. But after reading the kind of prologue, whatever it's called at the beginning, and it made that point, I've looked at it through the lens of someone in 19th century Russia reading it for the very first time. So that's the way I've looked at it, yeah, right? And understanding the history of the time when it was written, etc., and all the kind of like things that kind of went into it, gives you a lot more of a understanding, a lot more appreciation for that classic than otherwise comes from just idly like worshipping the classic for the sake of it being a classic. So that's what we're gonna be doing here for the next, well, how many years and stuff, right? So we're going to be doing one video a week. At the moment, we're sticking to this thing of Sunday at 5 p.m. because people tend to watch my videos more on a Sunday. And yeah, so I really hope that you enjoy that and stuff. There will at some point be films that like I might not end up covering and stuff, but obviously there's so many films. And also as well, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at just not just like Hollywood films, we're also going to be looking at great like films from just everywhere, right? We're going to be looking at Indian films, Chinese films, Russian films, like Middle Eastern films, Latin American films, European films, everything, right? So every kind of film genre and everything that kind of just everything, right? We're going to be covering as much of the kind of art of film as possible. So I really hope that you come along for the journey, and obviously don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe as well if you haven't already, because yeah, buckle up, there's going to be a long journey ahead, but I'm going to enjoy it. I hope that you come along and enjoy it with me as well, and obviously as well share it with anyone else who like you know who like loves films. And that's the thing as well, people kind of criticize me saying, why would you change from history and politics stuff to film? Surely that's too big of a jump. But my whole thing is, a person shouldn't just be limited to one thing they're interested in, right? I shouldn't just be limited just to talking about history and politics because I happen to be interested in that. I also am very passionate about film. So the point of this channel, Skeleton Keys Production, right, is, Skeleton Key, it opens the door to all opportunities, right? So it's a thing where I'm not going to limit myself with that. I'm going to talk about whatever it is that I want to talk about. And I feel also that a lot of people instinctively go, oh, I don't like history. Everyone loves films. And even if people love films but they don't necessarily like the history side of it, etc., cool, whatever. Still going to be covering this kind of stuff. And yeah, so anyway, hope you have a great day and see you soon. Bye.